So let's now proceed with the derivative of a function. So if you look at your syllabus, so before this topic, there's still a basic um, topic or course on a three-step rule, which leads us to the derivative of a function. But I just keep the three-step rule since I think what's more important in in the derivative process is katong the actual formula itself. Instead of using the three-step rule, so why not go directly to the different formulas or theorems on derivatives since magikan gapon siya from the three-step rule. So that's why I just skipped the three-step rule because you won't be able to appreciate much about that topic. Okay, so let's go to the derivative of a function. So derivative of a function is defined as the function denoted by f prime. So usually when we try to write the derivative of a function, usually it becomes this variable. So from this variable going to a certain variable f prime. So usually g of x prime. So any variable, as long as it's being derived or the derivative of it has been taken, so it becomes f prime or let's say x prime. So na siya prime nga kuan. So that's how you denote a derivative of a function, or you know that the function has been derived. Okay, so again, most likely this is what is the three-step rule looks like. So maglibog magmaayo, di ba? Because you're going to apply the limit and then the change in x, delta x, that's the change in x. So again, you won't be able to appreciate this much because of the complexity of the three-step rule. So think of it as a three-step rule is an old version of the derivative, and then the new version of the derivative is already the formulas. So before the formulas came, all types of derivatives were performed using the three-step rule. Okay, so again try to skip the three-step rule. So I'll be presenting you with other formulas, which is more relevant to the topic of derivatives. So let's go to the different theorems on differentiation. So other term for derivatives, you can call it as uh, differentiate, or you take the derivative, differentiation, differentiate. So that's the other term for derivatives. So it's different from difference is different from differentiate. Okay, so we have first one, the constant rule of differentiation. So if c is a constant, then the function of x, which is equal to the constant, would get a zero derivative. Okay, so again, from the original function, again, if you take the derivative, it becomes f prime of x. So naay mo apostrophe ang napuno, di ba kani siya? So coming from the original equation, when you take the derivative, mabutangan siya og prime na f of x prime. So the derivative of a constant is always a zero. Okay, so regardless of the big number, so again, if you take the derivative of 10, so this one is equal to zero. So all constants will give us a derivative of zero. So again, take note of how I place my answer. So it's f of x prime. So pili mo mag f of x and then you write the prime after f. So again, equal to zero. So again, sa 1 million pa na inyo ang constant. If you get the derivative, it's equal to zero. All constants will give us a zero derivative. So that's one basic theorem or rule. So all constants are zero, zero derivatives. Okay, so next is constant multiple rule of differentiation. So if you have a constant, so most likely it's going to be the constant times the derivative of a certain function. So this one is more like of a property, not a rule, since um, you just multiply the constant with the derivative of a certain equation. So I think you'll be able to appreciate this once we get to the other rules. So I'll just combine the other rules so that you'll be able to appreciate kani siya nga property. So again, constant rule. So you just take the constant outside and then get the derivative of the function and then multiply it again with the constant. So ana rin yang dating. So I think one great example would be, let's say 2x squared. So again, since I'm still going to discuss to you the power rule, so hindi pa kayo siya ma-appreciate. So for example, we're going to take the derivative. So again, 2 is constant, di ba? So 2 and then multiplied by the derivative of x squared. So that would be 2x. So the derivative of x would be 4x. Okay? So marginal na siya. Okay, so next is we have the sum rule of differentiation. So if you have multiple terms in your so if you have multiple terms in your equation, so let's say you're going to have a binomial or trinomial. So let's say you're having this equation, x squared plus 2x plus 4. So what this rule means is that you're going to take the derivative of each term. So meaning you have to get the derivative of the first term, you have to get the plus the derivative of the second term, plus the derivative of the fourth term. So more like of a property siya, some rule of differentiation. So wala kasi formula because adding up different derivatives won't really affect your overall answer. So probably you can also include the difference here, sum and difference. So okay, again, the operation of plus and minus won't really affect the answer of your derivatives. So I think this one is the most commonly used formula for um, variables with integers, power nga integers. So we have one for positive integers and then we have one for negative integers. So regardless of whether the exponent is positive or negative, the rule is always this one. So for example, you have this term here. So let's try to write this one. If your original function is f of x is equal to x to the power of n, so n is any exponent. So the rule, if you're going to derive your function of x, is that you have to bring down first your n variable. So notice that you bring down n. And then next is you take away one sa inyong exponent. Okay, so one good example for this is, so let's say you have x squared. So let's start small. So derivative of x squared would be 2x. So 2 minus 1. So pwede siya invisible 1, diba? Because it's really not that great if or good if you're going to put 1 sa inyong exponent. So for example, you're going to have x to the power 4. So again, the rule states that you have to bring down the exponent first. So bring down the exponent, then multiply by x, and then the numerator is to be taken away by one value. So 4 minus 1, that would be 3. So 4x cubed. So that's the formula. Okay. So super easy ra siya because ano dia ang formula daan. So if we're going to have it as negative, so it's still the same. So you try to bring down the negative exponent first, and then you minus again with 1. So ana, same as siya. So probably my advice when you deal with negative integers is that you have to understand how negative integers work, negative powers work. So for example, you're going to have x to the power of negative 2. So always take note that this can also be expressed as 1 over x squared. Okay, so same goes for radical expressions. Radical expressions meaning kanang mga square root. So for example, x to the power of 1/2, this is equivalent to the square root of x. Okay, so the denominator of the x variable refers to the root of the radical expression. So for example, you're going to have x cubed, x to the power of 1/3. So this is the cube root of x. So what about the 1? So it refers to the exponent of the x variable. So for example, you're going to have it as x to the power of, let's say, 2/5. So you have the fifth root first, referring to the denominator of the exponent and a fraction. So fifth root of x. So again, the 2 here would be the exponent of your x variable, so x squared. So that's how you interpret different forms of exponents. So negative, you can just take the reciprocal of that particular variable. So that's why it's 1 over x squared. So for radicals, that would be a different story since you're going to have a lot to interpret in your exponents for radical expressions. Okay, so let's try to answer some of the examples. So this is a combination of positive and negative exponents. So we also have to deal with the previous theorems, which are the constant theorems, diba? Itong constant rule theorem. So let's try to answer each item. So let's start with this one first. So f of x prime, because we're taking the derivative. So again, the rule is we have to bring down the exponent first. So again, looking at this one, the first term. So we have a coefficient of 15, diba? So as per rule states, we have to multiply the coefficient, the constant, with the derivative of the variable. So first one is 15, then multiplied by the derivative of x to the power of 100. So again, as per rule in your exponents, in the power rule. So bring down the exponent first, multiply by x, and then the exponent shall be taken away by 1. So instead of 100, this becomes 99. Okay, so this is the first term. And then minus, so again, that's the sum and difference rule of differentiation. So again, it won't, you just have to take the derivatives of each term. So we are going to have 4 terms here. Okay, so next is 3. 3 times, again, the derivative of x to the power of 12. That would be 12x to the power of 11. Next is 5. So derivative of x, so that would be x to the power of 1. So 1 minus 1. So again, let's try to 1 times x to the power of 0. And then minus the derivative of a constant. So again, as per the first rule of differentiation. So if you have a constant as your derivative, it is equal to 0. So the final answer would be 1500 x to the power of 99 minus, so 3 times 12, that would be 36 x to the power of 11. So x to the power of 0. So any variable raised to the power of 0 is equal to 1. So if this one is equal to 1, 5 times 1 times 1, that would be equal to 5. So of course, you may not write 0 anymore. Okay, what is redundant na, diba? If you try, or if you always try to write 0. Okay, so questions for the first example. So medyo daliran derivatives, diba? If you go straight away with the different formulas. Okay, so let's try this second example. So we have f of x prime. So again, first rule, rather second rule. So constant times the derivative of t to the power of 6. Then this one, the second one. So 2, and then apply the power rule. That would be 6 t to the power of 5 plus 7 times. So again, notice that we have a negative exponent. That would be negative 6. So it's still the same as any power rule of differentiation. So even though that your exponent is negative, the same rule applies. So I think all you have to do is need to be careful with this part here. When you subtract the numerator with negative with 1. So since it's negative and then you subtract 1, so instead of taking away 1, you are adding one more negative value to the exponent. So this one is negative 6 and times t. Then instead of negative 6, this becomes negative 7. So again, take note that this is a different approach, di ba? Or a different value compared with a positive power. So ang 6 nahimong 5, but for negative value, negative 6 minus 1, that would give us negative 7. So the final answer for this one would be 12 t to the power of 5. So plus and then minus, this would give us minus. So 42 t to the power of negative 7. Okay, so let's go to this item here. Okay, so 8 times 3z squared. So ato lang paspasan gamay. So kani siya, again, 1/3 and then over z to the power of 5. So actually you can write this one as negative 1/3 z to the power of negative 5, diba? So I think it's a better approach when you try to rewrite it in this manner. So negative 1/3 minus 1/3 rather. And then the derivative of z to the power of 5, that would be negative 5 z to the power of negative 6. And then derivative of z is equal to 1. So that would be 1 times z to the power of 0. So usually if to the power of 1 siya, ang button naman usually is amo na siya i-shortcut dito regardless of the kanang di na yung magsuwat og 1 times z to the power of 0 na ba. Asa kaning constant usually in shortcut terms we don't really write 0 or 1 in our expressions. So for the sake of kuan lang, following the solution, so muna siya. So final answer would be 24 z squared. And this one is minus minus. So this one is now plus. So plus 5/3 z to the power of -6 and then plus 1. Okay, so for the last item, so I think you have to try to make it into an exponential expression, meaning in terms of exponent. So from square root of x, this becomes x to the power of 1/2 plus 9. And again, this one is the index of the radical expression, meaning that's cube root. This one is the exponent of x. So this becomes 9 times x to the power of 7/3. And then minus, so this would be 2. So again, if it's in the denominator, the exponent would be negative. So this would give us x to the power of -2/5. So in most cases, sa akong na-observe is that mas lisod mag-derive of fractions, labi na when you take away 1 in the exponent. Okay, so you have f of x prime. So again, looking at the first term, that's x to the power of 1/2. So bring down 1/2. Then you have x. So 1/2 minus 1 is you have -1/2. So I hope that you're able to subtract fractions po, di ba? Okay, I think that's part of our secondary school math. So next is plus 9. So bring down, again, derivative of x to the power 7/3. So 7/3 x and then minus 1. This would give us 4/3. So try to calculator lang your fractions if you're not really that confident in annual computations. Then minus 2, then times -2/5 x, and then this becomes -7/5. So again, just try to calculate or get the difference using your calculator to verify the exponents. Okay, so final answer would be 1/2 x to the power of -1/2 plus. So again, I won't be really strict with the format of the final answer as long as you have derived it correctly. Okay, so this one is 21x to the power of 4/3. Then minus, so plus rather, 4/5 x to the power of -7/5. So 21 siya because this one is makancel atong 3, then 3 times 7 is 21. So any questions for the power rule? Okay, so I think there's no question for the power rule. So let's try to proceed with the next important rule, which is the product rule of differentiation. So we have here two different functions. So meaning you have two different sets of functions. So probably para di mo maglibog, you have two factors that you're going to get the derivative. So meaning it's being multiplied, di ba? So one could be set as one function of x, then the other one is another function of x. Or para di mo maglibog ano yung mga f of x, g of x, the other variable for this one, um, I think it's in other books it's being represented as uv plus udv plus vdu. Ana, na yung pag display. So let's try a different kana. So let's try this one if maklaro ba. Klaro siya. So again, in other books, ang kaniya to ang variable here is usually the function of f of x is usually denoted as the u variable, and then the g of x is the v variable. So meaning u is one factor, v is another factor, diba? Being multiplied by each other. So usually ang derivative daw ani is that it's going to be u and then the derivative of the second variable. So again, in reference to what I have written above, g of x is equal to v. So usually in other books, this one is dv, the derivative of v plus v, and then multiplied by again the derivative of the first term, derivative of u. So in most cases, the formula is u dv plus v du. So magnan lang siya pagka-present. Okay, so for you to be able to appreciate the formula, so let's go to the first example. So let's say this one is f of t. So again, prime since we are deriving. So kanisha is a difficult problem ni siya because it's composed of binomials and trinomials in each of the factors. So this one here is one whole term multiplied by another term here, a second term. So we may probably call this one as your u, and then this one is the v variable, whole v variable. So again, the rule states that we have to place first the original value of u. So in this case, that would be 4t squared minus t, and then multiplied by the derivative of the next term. So meaning we have to take the derivative of v. Kani siya. Ba? dv man ang second term, di ba? Derivative of the v variable or g of x prime. So multiplied by 3t squared. So notice, una ko kay taga na ko ana. Then 8 times 2, that would be 16t. So constant is 0, di ba? So pwede ra dito di magbutang og 0. So next is plus. Now is in the second term, we have to write the v variable first, the original v variable. So that would be t cubed minus 8t squared plus 12. Then multiplied by the derivative of the first term, du. So ano siya? So this would give us 8t minus 1. So again, if you try to get the different parts of this equation, this one is u dv plus v du. So I think the next step, difficult step of this one would be to simplify the answer. So kani siya, ato pa ni siya expand, and then we combine similar terms in the equation. So of course, I won't be showing that one to you since we're only interested in the formula as of now, as of the moment. But of course, you have to really express the final answer in its simplest form. So you have to multiply this one, expand the binomial. So again, muna siya yung button. You have to expand, you have to simplify the equations. So siya ako lang siyang ipakita lang on how you're going to apply the formula. Okay, so next is f of z. So again, try to simplify this answer. Kani siya on your own. Or hindi ka review ninyo. So let's try this another one. So again, you can set this one as your u variable, the first term, and then multiplied by the second term of v. So again, always if the situation is in product form, you have to use this formula. So again, just try to siguro, imagine it as uv. So the multiplication of two terms is equal to u dv plus v du. So kaning mga g of x, f of x that's a proper way of showing the formula, but it's complicated to understand, di ba? So mas may ng variables uv plus udv plus vdu. Ano. So again, as per formula, so you have to write first the u variable. So in this case, that's 1 plus 2z plus 3z squared. And then get the derivative of the second factor, which is dv. So this would give us 5. So again, 5z. Z to the power of 0 is equal to 1. So that's why it's 5. So dapat paspas na kayo mumukuan. Then the second one is 16z. So 16 is because it's bring down 2 and then minus 1 sa numerator, di ba? Power rule. That's why it's 16. And then the last one is minus 3z squared. So plus v du. So that would be the second term. So write first the v variable. So 5z plus 8z squared minus z cubed, then multiplied by the derivative of the first term or the first factor, which is the u parameter. So this would give us 2 plus 6z only. So derivative of 1 is 0. Derivative of 2z is 2. So that's why we have 2 here. Then plus 3z squared, derivative of 3z squared is 6z to the power of 1. 3 times 2 times z to the power of 1. So again, if you try to label the different parts, this one is u, this one is dv, this one is v, so plus v, then this one is du. So that's how you apply the formula. So again, with this very long application of the formula, the next step or the next difficult step would be simplifying your answer. And again, we won't have to do that here in class since medyo makuha ang oras, di ba? Especially that it's 8:12 na. All right, so any questions for the product rule? So again, after you apply the formula, you need to simplify the equation. So you have to expand, you have to group similar terms, cancel out terms as much as possible, and present the final answer in its simplest form.
Sir,
Mm.
pwede makata example for like isa lang example like mag-simplify na sir baka kalim unsa mi sir ba?
Sige, kaning
Thank you
sayon
sir.
lang, kaning sayon lang kay para di mo maglisod. So for example, let's say f of y is equal to, let's say, x squared times x squared, then y cube na. Di lang siguro y cube, kuan lang siguro. X squared and then multiplied by ito lang ning iko na simple as possible lang siguro. So let's say x minus 1, then you multiply it with x squared plus 4 siguro. So again, this one, you can set this one as your u parameter, this one as your v parameter. So x din siya, x. Okay, x variable mo dito. Or let's say y. Let's make it y lang para. So y minus 1 and then y squared plus 4. So getting the derivative, again, as per formula, u dv. So you write first the first term since it's a similar component, diba, u. You don't have to derive. You derive on the next term, which is y squared plus 4. So this would give us 2y. So plus 0. Derivative of a constant is 0, so that's only 2y. Plus, next is v. So that would be the second factor, y squared plus 4, multiplied by the derivative of u, the first factor. So it's only times 1. So y to the power of 1 would give you y to the power of 0. Then it is only equal to 1, di ba? Dito siya. So 0 din siya times 0. Because this one would give us, so ako lang iswat dyan kaya para makita dyan ninyo. So y to the power of 0 minus 0. Okay? So this would give us y1, y minus 1, 2y plus y squared plus 4. Then 1 minus 0. So this one is equal to 1. So times 1 na siya. Or you may not write 1 anymore. So next is you expand the equation. So since this one is binomial times 2y, so distribute 2y to each term. Okay, so this would give us 2y squared minus 2y. So again, the other term is times 1 ra. So again, take note also of the plus sign. So this is only y squared plus 4. So same ra, diba? So next is you combine different or similar terms. 2y plus y squared is equal to 3y squared. So the other terms have no other terms presented in the equation. So the final answer would be 3y squared. So 2 plus 1 minus 2y plus 4. So this would be the derivative of your function of y. So kani siya medyo taas lang kaya na siya ang akong i-present. So if you're going to expand that one, so medyo taas-taas yun na siya ang inyong button na for that case. So sige lang, I'll give you examples man sad kay para I'll give you an assignment for this one, pero kato lang mga simple, dili kaning lisod. Okay, kani siya, I just took this one from my previous slides sa engineering. Muna medyo makuratan dito kay anang akong i-present nila kay mga lisod na daan ba. But for your case, I'll give you as kanang simple as possible dito na mga problems. All right, so let's move on before we end our session because I still have class in the next I still have class on by 8:30. Okay, so if you have quotient rule, so again, you are presented with a very difficult expression, diba? But to make things simple, in most books, it's presented as u equals u divided by v. So if it's that, if it's division or in a fraction form, diba? It's division man, diba? Basta fraction form. So the formula would give us v du, meaning v times the derivative of u plus u dv, or rather it's minus there. So minus u dv all over v squared. So again, just take note that if this one is equal to u, the f of x, diba? So then this one is equal to v. So wala na siya ikaw na prime. So notice that this one is v. Then f of prime x is the derivative of u. So v du minus f of x, again, coming from the variable above, that is u. Derivative of g of x, that is the derivative of v, so dv. G of x, so walay prime, squared, that would give us v squared. So muna siya ang formula. So i-translate into this simple format. So usually maglibog ta kay daghang kayo kanang kuan, di ba? F of x, g of x, so on and so forth. So let's try this example for us to appreciate the formula. So getting the derivative f of x prime. So again, this would be our u parameter. This would be our v parameter. So applying the formula, v du. So you may write the formula first for you to avoid confusion. All over v squared. So v first, that would be 2x, 2 minus x, then multiplied by the derivative of u, that will give us 12x, minus the u parameter first, 6x squared, multiplied by, so 0, so that will be 0, okay, derivative of 2 is 0, and derivative of minus x, that would be minus 1. So again, this is coming from negative x to the power of 0. So divided by v squared. So that would be 2 minus x squared. Then we simplify the equation. So distribute 12x to each term above. So numerator first. So 24x minus 12x squared. Then this one is negative 6x squared. Then multiplied by negative 1. This would give us positive 6x squared all over the denominator. So this would give us 4 minus 2x, or rather it's 4. 4 minus 4x, then plus x squared. Okay, so simplify the equations, similar terms. So this one is similar. So our final answer would be 24x, so minus 6x squared, so all over 4 minus 4x plus x squared. So this would be the final answer. right, so let's go on with the next example. So again, this one is your u parameter. This one is the v parameter. So you may also try to write the terms first para di mo maglibog. So for example, in number 2, so you try to write u first. Na marginyo sang i-bisegment siya una. 3w plus w to the fourth. Na. Then getting the derivative of u, du. So this would give us 3 plus 4w to the power of 3. Na. So again, if you have w, x, mga y, and kanang raised to the power of 1, all of which gets a derivative of 1. Well, usually, I really don't write the variable anymore. Okay, diba? It's w to the power of 1 minus 1. So, marana siya, diba? 1. So, bring down the 1 exponent as per power rule. So, this would give us 1 times w to the power of 0. And again, any variable raised to the power of 0 is equal to 1. So, just try to put it in the calculator. Let's say 2 to the power of 0 would give you 1. Yeah, 1 times 1, it's all equal to 1. Usually, I really don't write anymore the value of 1 kay murag taas na kay siya steps pa niya. Mura siya kanang the same identity ra if you're going to multiply it by 1. So 3 times 1, 3 magyapon, di ba? So mana siya 3 plus 4w cubed. Then you write the v term. So v term is 2w squared plus 1. Then getting the derivative of v, so you have 4w only, di ba? So plus 1, since it's a constant, that would give us 0. So we now apply the formula. So function of x, so again, u dv, baliday, v du rather. Okay, quotient rule man ta. So v du minus u dv over v squared. So you have here, first is v du, so 2w squared plus 1 multiplied by du, so that would give us 3 plus 4w cubed minus the u parameter. This is 3w plus w to the power of 4 multiplied by 4w only all over v squared. 2w squared plus 1 and then squared siya. So you can also express that in that manner para di mo maglisod. Okay, so next would be simplifying the equation. So medyo kutis siya kay taas kay siya nga process. So I think you can try it on your own asad. Okay, I think expanding algebraic expressions are easy. Kakay na sa atong high school ang kaning mga algebraic expressions, kaning binomials, trinomials. So I think you have a base knowledge for expanding such equations. So kaning derivative is medyo kuan siya. Para in a sense it's an algebraic exercise compared with kanang kuan. Okay, so again, try to simplify number 2. So I think I presented you with another way of solving the formula. So muna siya ang other way. So you try to get the variables first before applying it with the equation. Same goes with the product rule. So if you go to your product rule, so you may write all the variables first, du, and then v, and then dv, and then you try to apply the formula. So you have udv plus vdu ana. So pwede siya inana ninyo pag-express pod. Para yun siyang ma-take into account ang iyang mga different steps sa inyong differentiation. All right, so questions or clarifications? So I'll try to give you an assignment with the power rule, the product rule, and the quotient rule. Okay, I think these are the important formulas that you need to master in the derivatives. Okay, labi na when we go to other types of derivatives such as kato ng mga trigonometric formulas, logarithms, and other types of functions. So you have to use these 3 basic rules of differentiation in order for you to get those derivatives. Okay. So if you don't have any further questions, so I think that would be it for this session, and I'll see you all on Thursday.
Excuse me, sir.
Sige, Saman.
Do we have midterms, sir?
Oh, we have midterms, but
Ah.
I still need to discuss all the derivatives first before going with the midterm exam.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So probably before before Holy Week. Para after Holy Week we go with the integrals na pod. Okay. Sige. So if there's no question, so you may leave the Zoom. You may now leave Zoom, and I'll proceed with my next class. So thank you all very much for this session.
Goodbye and thank you, sir.
Sige,
Thank you,
goodbye.
sir.